Riyadh is forging closer ties with Beijing amid deteriorating ties with Washington DC. Is China forming a new anti-American bloc? All this while NATO's fresh supply of weapons to the Ukraine war bring it one step closer to a direct confrontation with Russia. And Donald Trump has become the first former US president to be a criminal defendant. A very warm welcome to World 360 with me, Akanksha Swaroop. Before I delve deeper, here's a quick look at the headlines first. Donald Trump indicted by a grand jury in New York in the case of hush money paid to adult film star Stormy Daniels in 2016. The indictment is the first one ever against a former US president who's expected in court next week. Riyadh joins Shanghai Cooperation Organization as ties with Beijing grow despite security concerns in Washington, Riyadh's traditional ally. As Taiwan's diplomatic partners dwindle and turn to rival China, Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen shores up support in a surprise stopover in New York, followed by a visit to Central America. China warns of a strong but unspecified response. And Russian authorities detain an American journalist working for the Wall Street Journal, accusing him of espionage, marking a new escalation of tensions between Moscow and Washington. US President Biden calls for Russia to release the reporter. The former US President Donald Trump has been indicted by a New York grand jury in connection with his alleged role in a hush money payment involving adult film star Stormy Daniels that dates to the 2016 presidential election. This is a story that's making headlines across the world. Trump faces more than 30 counts related to business fraud in the indictment, but the indictment remains under seal. The former president is expected to be arraigned in a Manhattan criminal court on Tuesday, but the timing of this appearance remains fluid. A target in the probe has been the payment made to Stormy Daniels and the Trump Organization's reimbursement to Cohen. Prosecutors were also weighing in on whether to charge Trump with falsifying business, which in this case could be a violation of campaign finance laws. Now, Donald Trump has responded to the indictment. He has called it a political witch hunt by the Democrats. Can Trump still run for presidency in 2024 even though he's been indicted? The answer is yes. But political analysts are already asking what kind of an impact will this have on the 2024 presidential election in the United States? And is this just the beginning of Trump's legal woes? Remember, the former president has far more serious allegations than the hush money payment. And that begs the question if Trump's legal woes will polarize the American voters further.
Are you worried this will further divide our country, the indictment?
I have no comment on that.
Mr. President.
Possible protest in the wake of the indictment?
No, I'm not going to talk about Trump's indictment.
Now, the unprecedented move is bound to impact not just on Donald Trump, but the U.S. judicial and political system overall as well. On that note, let me also introduce my two guests today. Nicole Brenner-Schmitz, who's a Democrat strategist, joining me live from Jackson Hole in Wyoming, while Republican strategist Corinne Clark joins me live from Washington, D.C. Corinne, if I may begin with you, will Donald Trump's indictment impact his presidency campaign for 2024?
Yeah, I think this indictment will have a huge impact on Trump's campaign for president, and it will be positive. I think that this witch hunt actually reminds a lot of us 2016 Trump supporters why it is that we loved this guy, and it's because the establishment, the system hates this guy, and they will do anything to take him down, and that is what they're doing now. We've seen them do it before. This is no different than that, and I think it will remind a lot of us what it is that we like about Trump.
All right, Nicole, if I could bring you in, how will the indictment impact Trump's supporter base and the grand old party as well?
I mean, look, yes, it's going to affect it for sure. Does he have a base that does not care about this? Absolutely. Trump has shown it. He knows it. He's been quoted for years saying, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and it wouldn't matter. He has a base that is so dedicated to him. But the Republican Party is going through a trauma. They are deciding, do we really want this to continue to be our leader who cannot win a general? Or do we want to change course? And changing course has multiple choices. There's a DeSantis who is very Trump-like, or there's a more moderate version. And that is what the Republican Party needs to decide for themselves right now. What do they want their future to be? But Donald Trump, as we've seen, people who mimic him, Kerry Lake in Arizona, Jim Merchant in Nevada, they run, they lose. They're not winning generals. They're winning primaries. So they have a problem with their base and they have to figure that out. But these people are not winning generals.
Corinne, former U.S. Vice President Mike Pence has said that the indictment of Donald Trump sends a terrible message and will encourage dictators to abuse power all over the world. What are your thoughts?
I think that was one of the strongest statements that we've seen from Mike Pence in a number of years, and I am happy that he said that because he is absolutely right. This indictment sets a terrible precedent for American politics for years to come. What they are trying to do is indict President Trump to impact his campaign because they are under the false assumption that it will negatively affect his campaign. What that means is that they are trying to pull the strings on who is allowed to serve in office. And they are trying to say that they don't think that Trump should be allowed to serve. So they will use the entire system, our justice system, for this terrible injustice to keep somebody that the people want to run for office, to keep them from successfully doing so.
Nicole, how do you view Pence's comments, considering Trump is the first former U.S. president to become a criminal defendant?
Right. Well, I mean, unfortunately, I don't completely agree with former Vice President Mike Pence. There have been former electeds who have been charged under this same issue, this way of using money inappropriately. He is right. It's the first former president, but it's a triumph to the American justice system that when you are a former president, you are still not above the law. And a jury of his peers, regular American citizens, decided that this moves to indictment. He's not guilty. This is our system. He will now move to a trial. He will now go through the judicial system that the American process has decided is a fair and a way that every American, whether you are a former elected or, for lack of a better word, a Joe Schmo, gets to go through if you break the law. So he's going to go through the process like any American citizen, which just goes to show the American judicial system at its best.
Right. Corinne, the Georgia Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene has tweeted announcing that she will come to New York on Tuesday and has urged people to protest what she calls the unconstitutional witch hunt. Keeping in mind what happened during the Capitol riots of January 2021, how do you weigh in on these rallying cries, including that of Donald Trump's?
Every American should be responsible for themselves and protest in a nonviolent way. I don't think anyone's rally cry is suggesting that they should be violent, and I hope that there will be no violence.
All right. I bet Nicole begs to differ. Nicole, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Should Americans be concerned about their safety?
Yeah, this is what Americans should actually be concerned about. The idea that elected officials are calling for violence, whether it was in fact Donald Trump on January 6th or Marjorie Taylor Greene now in New York over this, when this is the American judicial system, is what Americans should be angry and concerned about. We have a peaceful process. Let the peaceful process go through its stages. Calling for violence is exactly what has led America to have a situation where we are experiencing, I'm sorry, I tear up, school shootings. Once a week, we're watching our children be murdered. This call to violence is exactly that kind of rhetoric that is leading to these issues. So Marjorie Taylor Greene needs to understand that she is part of that problem by calling people to violence. Call people to a peaceful protest if you think that is what's needed. A peaceful protest is what America is about. But we have a judicial system. Donald Trump is in the middle of a fair and peaceful judicial system right now.
I'm really sorry, Nicole, that you have to witness such a day in the United States. Having said that, many thanks to you, Corinne and Nicole, for joining in on World 360. And with that, I should focus over to Taiwan. Its President Tsai Ing-wen visited the United States this week, fueling China's anger. China, which claims democratically ruled Taiwan as its own territory, has repeatedly warned U.S. officials not to meet Tsai Ing-wen, who is on her first U.S. stopover since 2019. Beijing has vowed to retaliate if Tsai Ing-wen meets with the U.S. Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, but that meeting has been postponed. In an angry response from Beijing, 9 Chinese aircraft crossed the Taiwan Straits median line on Friday, carrying out combat readiness patrols. Speaking in New York, Tsai Ing-wen even said that Taiwan's relationship with the United States has never been closer. Now, in a move that's intimidated foreign press in Russia, Moscow has detained Wall Street journalist, the 31-year-old Evan Gershkovich, on charges of espionage. Moscow has attempted to reassure journalists, stating that accredited foreign journalists could continue to work in Russia. Notably, is the first such case against an American reporter since the end of the Cold War. A Moscow court, in a closed-door hearing, has ordered that Gershkovich be held in pre-trial custody until at least 29th of May. The United States has now asked all of its citizens in Russia to leave on an immediate basis. In fact, U.S. President Biden has urged Russia to release the Wall Street journalist to let him go amid a broadening rift in the U.S.-Russia relations.
Провели там по-быстрому суд, я не знаю, сколько он занял, 3 минуты, 15 минут, я не знаю. И все, и после этого, насколько я понимаю, опять же, предполагаю, вот у нас у всех такая позиция сложилась, что Эвана уже увезли отсюда с постановлением о назначении ему ареста на срок, на который мы не знаем.
We are in close contact with the Wall Street Journal on this issue. And also, I would like to make it clear that it is not safe for U.S. citizens to be in the Russian Federation. Any U.S. citizen residing or traveling in Russia should depart immediately, as stated in our latest travel advisory. Those who require assistance in departing Russia should contact the U.S. Embassy in Moscow for assistance.
Now, Saudi Arabia is joining an anti-Western influence bloc formed by Russia and China. This in a sign of Riyadh's deepening ties with Beijing as Washington withdraws from West Asia. Riyadh's decision to join the bloc comes less than 3 weeks after a reconciliation agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which was hailed as a coup for peacemaker Beijing, while Oman and Iraq had hosted previous efforts to restore relations between Shia-majority Iran and mainly Sunni Saudi Arabia. Riyadh has been crediting Xi Jinping for his offer last year to act as a bridge. China's deepening relations with the Gulf region come as the Biden administration is disengaging from West Asia with a view to challenge Beijing's rising influence elsewhere. Now, the United States has long served as a security partner for Saudi Arabia, and Washington's withdrawal has prompted its Gulf allies to diversify partners. And with that, let me shift attention over to the Russia-Ukraine war that's only escalating with each passing week with no end in sight. NATO has finally entered the Ukraine battlefield. The deliveries of NATO tanks had begun rolling into Ukrainian territories. 8 German-made Leopard 2 battle tanks, which Norway pledged to Ukraine, have now been received by Ukraine. The tanks were promised in late January, along with 4 special-purposed tanks from its armoured engineering and bridge layer category. Western allies have pledged to send more modern battlefield tanks to Kiev. But on the other hand, North Korea is preparing to send 500,000 soldiers from its armed forces on combat missions in support of Russia's special military operation in Ukraine. Pyongyang is also willing to contribute to the effort by dispatching its troops to take part in the special military operation by Russia. And back in the battlefield, UN officials have warned that Russian soldiers are massing near the Ukrainian nuclear plant. Russian state TV has showed footage of the head of the UN's atomic energy watchdog touring Ukraine's Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. International Atomic Energy Agency Director General has crossed the front lines for a second time to reach this plant, though there have been no reported hits to the reactors. And with that, it's time to slip into a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back with the latest from across the globe. Stay tuned to World 360.